Hi, hello, and welcome or welcome back to another episode of Bella's Bookish Banter podcast. If you're new here, I'm your host, Bella. I'm a teenage girl who loves to read and talk about books. And if you do too, then this is the podcast for you. So please stick around. Today's podcast episode is just going to be a shorter one. I'm going to be doing a little book review of Not Here to Be Liked by Michelle Quach. So, my friend actually introduced this book to me. I went over to her house a few weeks ago. I went over to her house and I saw the book and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And so, yeah, so she introduced it to me. She was like, "Oh, yeah, it's like so good. Like you need to read it." And so, immediately after I left her house, I went to the bookstore and I bought the book because she really sold me on it. And so, I bought it and then I read it within like a week or 2, I think I started it, and boy, am I so glad I did because I really like this book. I'm very excited to talk about it. First, I'm gonna give you a little synopsis of the book. We follow our main character, Eliza Quan, who is a junior in high school. And Eliza doesn't particularly care about her looks. She's very focused academically and in school, and she says she would rather be recognized for those things rather than looking good. And she has a mom and a sister who argue with her about this all the time. Eliza devotes a lot of her time to the school newspaper. It's one of the things she's most passionate about. And as a junior this year, she can finally run for editor in chief of the paper. Obviously, she's so excited about this, and she's running unopposed. Last minute, Len DiMartile, an ex baseball player who has been on the paper for just a few months, in contrast to Eliza's entire high school career, decides at the last minute to run against Eliza. Eliza knows that there's no chance he'll win and pays no mind to him, except Len does win the election. Everyone knows that Eliza is very much qualified for the role and probably would have done a better job. So, the conclusion that Eliza draws from this is that the reason Len was chosen instead of Eliza is because he's fairly good looking, he's popular, and most importantly, he's a male. Eliza is enraged by this and expresses her feelings in a short essay that she wrote in private. Suddenly, though, Eliza's private essay is published in the school paper and has gone viral, even after it's taken down. This action leads to a chain of events inspiring a feminist movement at her school. However, because tensions are so high between Len and Eliza, the school administration forces them to work together on any current jobs they have for the newspaper. And as they start to spend more time together and see different sides of each other, they maybe start to fall in love along the way. But Eliza already made such a big deal about Len being the quote unquote face of the patriarchy to the entire school. How is she going to explain it when it gets out that she's starting to fall for the face of the patriarchy? Wow, what a synopsis. Okay, before we get into anything, I just want to say the romance between Len and Eliza was really good. I loved it. I ate it up. It is a subplot. Like, I mean, it's kind of the main plot because it's like, I guess it's like a big part of what's happening, but like the actual romance is more of a subplot. But like, it's so good. I really love to read about it. It's an opposites attract. Len is very laid back. He's just such like a chill, low key guy, and Eliza is very much a planner. Not I wouldn't say like a worrier, but she really likes to plan things to the T. She stresses over things. Um and so yeah, so per so their contrasting personalities were really fun to read about, and their interactions were so funny, especially as they're starting to get to know each other. Yeah, it was a great time. And then there's also like it's kind of a whole forbidden love type of thing because Eliza doesn't want it to get out that she's starting to like and Len is starting to like her, especially after she made such a big deal about hating Len because he took this job that he didn't deserve, in her words. That's what she was so loudly telling the entire school. And so yeah, so it's kind of a forbidden love type of thing. I love Len as the love interest because he's just so understanding of Eliza's situation, and when he doesn't understand, he makes an effort to, and I think that goes for Eliza too. And he always listens to her, she listens to him. and they just both really put in the work to be there for each other. And yeah, it's just so cute. Oh my god. Also, what really got me is that the two go on bubble tea dates. Like, it kind of becomes a thing between them because at first they had to do this thing for the newspaper, and then they actually started going to get bubble tea together regularly, and it was just the cutest thing ever. I loved reading about them. So yes, the romance in this book was great. The themes in this book, there were quite a lot of themes in the book. There was obviously the romance I just talked about. It kind of talks or expresses the teenage experience, which I'm gonna get into in a second. And then obviously there's the whole theme of feminism and all the topics they talk about there. So yeah, the first thing I want to talk about is the teenage high school experience. I really loved the way the book talks about being a girl in high school. I mean, it doesn't necessarily talk about it, but the way it expresses it. So Eliza is known in her school for being this very self assured feminist. She takes school and her job at the newspaper very seriously. And, she seems just very like confident, self assured in the person she is and the things she does. And because there's people in the book, like other characters, like to say stuff to her, which I guess like that's just how high school is. She could be an unlikable main character sometimes, but like I think the characters and even me as a reader would forget that Eliza is a teenage girl, and because of that, she's allowed to make mistakes. She's actually bound to make mistakes. When Eliza would make these mistakes, she was ridiculed. When she was standing up for the things she believed in, she was called crazy. She was made fun of. When she tried to change things about herself, to her personally, from her point of view, it felt like people were always taking notice and commenting. Even though Eliza is for the most part confident in herself, she still does have moments where she doesn't quite feel herself and she feels as if everyone's watching her and she can never get it right. And I just think that's so true. I mean, as a teenage girl myself, it's like girls girls in general, but especially teen girls, like, there's literally nothing that they can like without being judged or that they can do. They're gonna get judged either way. And it's really such a struggle because it's kinda like you never know if you're gonna be doing the right thing or if that like, what you do is gonna be made fun of or if it's gonna be applauded or if, like, it always feels like it's gonna have an effect on you and the people around you. And I really felt that when Eliza would talk about it or when it was showed through the book. I really felt that. I thought it was shown really well. I once saw a review of this book where someone called Eliza a pick me girl, which one okay, I hate the use of that term in its own right because that in its of itself is I feel like it's just another term, another used as another reason to hate on women. But whatever. The review called her picky girl because she is already given so much to not caring about her looks, or she used to not care about her looks. And, she's like, hey, well, my sister cares about her looks. I don't. And like, she kind of talks, especially in her family, she talks about how she feels like she's stuck. Like, that when she does want to try makeup or when she does want to change something, she doesn't feel as if she can, or she feels like people are going to comment on it. And she's scared to do that because she knows people are going to say stuff about it. And she doesn't know how they'll react. I think that's really what the book showed, is that in her position, it doesn't feel like she can change what she's doing without being judged. And I think that's what the book was trying to show, and I can get how people got that wrong. Like, people said, like, oh, she just doesn't want to be like other girls. Like, okay, I hate that term. But I really think it was just trying to say is that Eliza, she wants to try new things, but she can't 'cause not that she can't, but she doesn't want to get judged for it. She knows that her mother's going to comment something. She knows that friends are going to comment something. Even random people at her school are going to comment on it. And overall, it's just in general, I really like how it shows that, just teenagers can't know everything. It's not possible for them to get everything right all the time, and they're going to make mistakes. and they're going to be insecure no matter how much they might show that they're not. Everyone feels that way, especially teenagers. And so there were moments in the book where we saw Eliza who would deal with regular teenage insecurities, and she would feel imposter syndrome, or she would make mistakes and she would have to live with them, and she would get judged for them, or she would judge herself for them. And so these moments where we got to see Eliza, who is always such like so self-assured, we got to see her be insecure, and we got to see her make mistakes and learn from her mistakes. They were very rare, but I really liked reading about it, and I think that it was portrayed really well. Let's talk about some of the topics that the book talked about. So, one of the first things I took notice of when reading this book is how the characters were being treated when it came to talking about feminism. So, Eliza, she brings it up first when her essay gets published. Like, obviously she wasn't planning on her getting her essay published, and she's really embarrassed and surprised when it happens. But, she knows what she said, and she doesn't regret what she said. And, people at the start of this book, when she was just alone, she was very much made fun of. She was very much ridiculed by the other students, called crazy, and that she was, just wanted an excuse because she was upset she didn't win, and she wasn't being taken seriously. And then there's another character, I think it's Serena. There's another character, Serena, who is she's more popular at the high school. She's very well liked. She does pay attention to the way she looks, and she's likes to look put together, like that kind of thing. And so she agrees with Eliza, and only when she starts speaking out about it do other people start to listen. I just found that so interesting, because that is the way our world works, is people are going to judge you on the way you look, like regardless of how old you are, regardless of where you work, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're a teenage girl. The things you talk about, the way you're going to be taken seriously, those all vary depending on all of those things. I thought that was really interesting to read about, and as the characters watch that happen, and just the way that Eliza, who when she started talking about feminism, she was not taken seriously because people didn't like her. And because she's a girl and they didn't like her, they were able to call her crazy. But then when Serena started talking about feminism and the sexism at her school, people took her seriously and they listened to her. The next thing I want to talk about is intersectionality. There wasn't really an That's what I loved about this book, is that there wasn't an outright conversation about being intersectional, but it was shown in the book. Just like the whole book is just there. Basically all of the main cast, like all the main characters and even side characters, as far as I remember, were people of color, except maybe one. With the main character, Eliza, she was half Vietnamese, half Chinese, and her love interest, Len, was half Japanese. And what was really interesting is that the two love interests, they have conversations about their backgrounds and about their families, and that was really interesting to read about. And then we also got to see Eliza having conversations with her sister and her mother, and their views on feminism and what it like the sort of roles you take being a woman, like the way her mother talks about being a woman. And these beliefs obviously come from a different place and a different time. And that's how her mother grew up, and that's what she believed. And Eliza doesn't exactly agree that that's the way things should be, but she can see why her mother believes that. And because she loves her mother, it's hard. It's just really hard to have those conversations. And with her sister, she talks about the different ways it's affected the two of them, just from those family things, especially being children of immigrant parents. There's just a lot of different pressures that can come with that. The next thing, what really ticked me off the whole book throughout reading this book was the way the characters were so judgmental. They're just the entire book, all of the characters were so judgmental about their feminism, and the way to have productive conversations about like really any like social justice issue is you have to be able you have to be willing to teach people and have people here so that they want to be there, and let them learn and let them make mistakes and let them be there for whatever reason they want. And this happened with so many of the other characters. Everyone was so judgmental, had so many judgments about whether one person's feminism was valid or not. If their point of view didn't fit what they thought, they would just pick and choose one feminism was convenient for them. However, leading into my next point is I think that that was part of the whole moral of the book, is that when you're having these conversations and when you want to make change, you have to let yourself make mistakes and you have to let other people make mistakes and you have to learn to grow from them. None of the girls, and this includes Eliza, really seem to know what they're doing at first. They're they're just so judgmental of each other and they disagree on their views. And I feel like the main character especially doesn't know exactly what she's trying to do, but she feels very judged about all the things she do, especially when she gets into her relationship with the guy who is the quote unquote face of the patriarchy, as they call him in the book. She feels like she can't make mistakes because people hold her to this high standard, and she doesn't feel like she's in a place where she'll be forgiven if she makes these mistakes. Basically, the environment at first that was created was supposed to be very feminist. I feel like didn't really hold the right values, which like everyone is going to disagree. But I think what's most important is that you should be there to be willing to learn and to let other people learn and to listen to others. And I think that's what they learned at the end of the book, or at least the main character learned herself, that judging people and ridiculing people and calling other people's views not valid is not the way to go about things and not the way to make change. Through analyzing relationships with her friends and love interests and even family, we get to see through the character's eyes that everyone is going to have their own views on things, and they're definitely not always going to align. But feminism is about acknowledging that all these different experiences and views, though they're going to vary, are still valid and should be taken into account. She learns that you gotta learn to live with these things rather than isolating people when they don't agree with you. And also that people's views and opinions are allowed to change, that people learn and grow, especially by making mistakes. And these mistakes should be welcomed, and people should feel safe to speak out and ask questions and rather be wrong than never say anything at all and never learn and never grow. So, yeah, those were just some of the themes that were covered, and I think a lot of them were covered really well. So now, unfortunately, there's not a lot, but unfortunately, there were some things that I wasn't the biggest fan of. So I'm just gonna talk about them a little bit here. The first thing is Len being referred to as the face of the patriarchy. So, this is the title that Len was given after Eliza's essay came out about how she believed that he was awarded the role for being a man, and everyone got mad at him and wanted him to quit, whatever. So, reading this on the back of the book, I was led to believe that Len would be like, I just thought he would be like this blatantly misogynistic teenage boy who, was like who agreed with the sexism taking place at their school and would just like, who was just like said offensive things. However, Len literally does nothing the whole book besides getting chosen for editor, but like he doesn't provoke Eliza or calls her crazy. He supports most of what she does. He was chosen for this role wrongfully so, which everyone agrees on, and everyone is immediately villainizing him. However, Len didn't do anything. Like, they should have been focusing on why it's always a male getting voted on rather than actually Len, cuz it just it felt this whole book, it felt like the motive for their what they were doing felt very off. Like, and it just felt like a very weak reason for wanting to do what they were going to do. They wanted him to quit because they didn't think that he deserved it. However, I don't think that was the right approach to it. I think, yes, it was wrong that Len was chosen for the role when Eliza is very clearly much more qualified and should have been chosen. However, that's not Len's fault. That is the deep internalized sexism at their school. Len literally, he didn't do anything blatantly wrong or sexist, which I guess he also didn't speak out about it. Like, he was just quiet the whole time. However, still, I think it's such a big way to put on a teenage boy, like saying, "Oh, you're the face of the patriarchy," when he didn't really do anything wrong. And I feel like it wasn't talked about enough. I don't think it was right for them to immediately villainize him when he didn't really do anything wrong. And I feel like there definitely could have been a better motivation to the start of this movement at her school. The reason they chose just felt weak and a little bit of a letdown. Number 2, the reason that their whole movement starts and they say that they want to quote unquote ban sexism at their school. So, especially at the start of the book, a lot of the girls say they want to ban sexism and are angry about the way these girls have been treated in the past are continued to being treated, which is valid completely. However, I don't think that this was the right way to go about it. I mean, you can't just ban sexism. Like, sexist ideas and misogynistic ideas have been planted in our heads since we were babies. They are ingrained in there. And it's really more about trying to change that and to unlearn and to change the system that has these things in place rather than you can't just quote unquote ban like you can't ban sexism. And that just didn't really make sense to me. And I didn't see that get talked about or resolved in the book either. Which brings me to my next point was that I felt as though the book was definitely more of a conversation starter rather than actually having a conversation. It talked about a lot of issues and it covered a lot, except I don't, they didn't go very in depth about a lot of things. I think the topics that it covered were covered well, but it was just very much like the tip of the iceberg. Like it covered, I think it tried to cover a lot, which was good, but it didn't go in depth about it, and so there wasn't too much information there, which is why I mean it's more of a conversation starter rather than actually having a conversation. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because I think if it entices a reader to do more research and look into it on their own, that's good. However, some people won't do that and they might just get ideas that this is kind of as basic as the way they were portrayed in the book. I didn't feel very good about that. Okay, I didn't annotate this book. And so I was going to do a little section for quotes, but I didn't annotate the book and it was kind of hard to find quotes. However, one quote I do have is everyone loves a girl boss until she tries to tell you what to do, which I thought was cool. That was at the beginning of the book when she doesn't get chosen for the thing because people say she's not approachable and angry and stuff. So, my overall rating for this book is a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was a great rivals to lovers romance. It covered a lot of topics and I think it did it well. And I will definitely be on the lookout for the author Michelle Quach's next book, The Boy You Always Wanted, which is being published in August of 2023. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Bella's Bookish Banter. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did recording it. Please feel so free to leave a rating or a review wherever you're listening. It really does help out the podcast so much. And if you know someone who you think might be interested in listening to the podcast, please share with them. I'd love to have them here. If you want to stay updated on the podcast and what I'm reading, then go follow us on Instagram at Bella's Bookish Banter Pod. And if you want to give me a book rec or talk about books, I would love to talk about books with you. So please send me a DM on Pinterest or Instagram at Bella's Bookish Banter Pod because I love hearing about you guys so much. Seriously, I appreciate you guys so much and I love it when you guys DM me. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.